death in the morning. Oh, death in the morning. Oh, death in the morning. Spare me over and another year. Well, death walked up to the Santa's gate. I believe you have waited now a little too late. Your feet were not 102. Have a narrow chance to be ever put through. They cried, oh, death. Crying, oh, death in the morning. Oh, death. Yes, spare me over in another year. Hey, what is this I see? Cold ice and hands all over me. He say I am death, no one can excel. I opened the doors of death and hell. He cried, Lord, death. Now, oh, death in the morning, oh, death. Just spare me over in another year. No, you heard God people sing and pray. You would not heed, you just walked away. You would not even bend your knee. Now you got to come and go with me. They cried, Lord, death. Now, death in the morning, oh, death. Just spare me over another year. Well, I'm gonna fix your feet so you cannot walk. Fix your tongue where you cannot talk. Close your eyes and you cannot see. And you got to come and go with me. She cried, Lord, death. Now, oh, death in the morning. Oh, death. They'll spare me over another year. Well, devil, consider my age. And do not take me in this state, because all of my wealth is at your command. If you just move your cold icy hand, you cry, no, no. Now, oh, death in the morning, no, no. Lord, spare me over in another year.
That was Bessie Smith singing "Oh Death" in the 1930s. Good morning. And it is always a good morning when we are here together. I say good morning. Yeah. Welcome to the live, in-person and live Zoom worship service of the Universalist Unitarian Church of Riverside. Our opening hymn is number 205, Amazing Grace, from the Gray Hymnal. You will need to use your hymnal as no words are projected. We will be singing a cappella with Judy Collins. Tinka and I had the wonderful privilege to hear her sing this song in 2005 at the spiritual closing of the AA International Convention in Toronto. I'm the alcoholic. She's not, just to be clear. That was Toronto, Canada. We and 40 to 50,000 attendees stood up and joined her. It was the most moving and spiritual experience. Feel free to sing as the Spirit moves you. Please stand in body or spirit and join us in singing hymn number 205, Amazing Grace.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us here in person, and thank you for joining us remotely by Zoom, where we will continue live streaming and posting these services on our YouTube channel for our virtual attendees. I'm Nick Williams, a member of the Worship Committee, and I will be your worship associate today. Other members of the Worship Committee who make this service possible include Alec Peck, our music coordinator, Adam Wedeking, who monitors our visual and online connections, and Kate Lewicki, who is in charge of our sound system, and Tinka Friend, who will deliver her sermon about gospel music this morning. We welcome you to join us this morning with an open mind and an open heart, and with muted electronic devices. Please. We invite you to leave your worries and defenses at the door and trust that what happens in worship is inspiring and powerful. Together, we affirm that this day and our being together can make us braver, more compassionate, and wiser as we begin a new day and a new week. Before we move into the service, there are a few announcements we would like to share. We will mention several websites, email addresses, and phone numbers. At the end of the service, we will leave up a slide with all this information, and it's available on our website. Sharing joys and concerns is one of the important rituals in our community. Our opportunity to share milestones, losses, achievements, and experiences with one another. On the first Sunday of each month, we will hear from those in the sanctuary and read any joys and concerns which we have received. For those of you at home, you can send your joys and concerns throughout the month to uucrchurchofriverside@gmail.com. Our next Joys and Concerns will be on April 6th. Since I won't be there and have the opportunity, I'll share with you now my joy and concern. I have a surgical date for my back surgery. It is April 4th, a Friday, and so I will be recovering from that Sunday and won't have an opportunity to be here. I look forward to this surgery, as I have for some time, to relieve a lot of pain that I'm in, and I invite your prayers and meditations and good thoughts. EPIC, EPIC, a new group exploring spiritual paths through creativity, will be meeting this afternoon in the parish hall from 1 to 3:30 p.m. Everyone is welcome. The next board meeting will be held March 17th at 5:30 p.m. in the annex. We invite you to attend a pledge gathering following the service next Sunday, March 23rd at 11:30 a.m. in the parish hall. Lunch will be served. In these challenging times, it's more important than ever to create a fiscally responsible budget. Please attend if you appreciate the effort and commitment it requires to maintain and sustain our beloved spiritual home and keep our doors open to the community. We will have a discussion on the direction of our congregation and the direction that it should take for the next year. The Social and Environmental Justice Committee is meeting today in the annex at 11:30 a.m. You will find the Zoom link and more information on the website under Social and Environmental Justice. I would now like to invite Adam Wedeking, Chair of the Social and Environmental Justice Committee, to tell us about their current project.
Good morning.
Good morning.
There are a number of things going on with the Social and Environmental Justice Committee right now, so hopefully people who can make it come after the service at 11:30 in the annex. I did want to talk about one thing coming next month. I believe it's on the 12th. Yeah, April 12th is a Saturday. There is an interfaith walk for immigration justice. This is actually being put on by the local Catholic churches, I believe, but they've invited all sorts of denominations in the area to join. So they will be meeting at the MLK statue and then walking to the Catholic church that's just down the road here at St. Francis de Sales. So hopefully you can come and walk with us, and also hopefully you can come to our meeting a little later this morning and talk about some other things that are coming up. So thank you.
Thank you, Adam. If they invited us, it might be all right. Welcome to all our visitors today, and welcome back to our old friends. We love to meet you during coffee hour after the service. Our time together is brief, but it is filled with joy. In that spirit, I invite you to turn to those around you, greet them, welcome them, and share that joy. Hi, Maggie. Good to see you. For those on Zoom, you can use the Zoom wave gesture or just wave at your camera. To all of our new visitors, we'd love to chat with you out in the parish hall, where you can also find our visitors book. Please leave your name before you go so that we know you were here, and leave your contact information if you want updates on church events. There will be a short discussion after the service to share the reflections of that sermon. For those online, the best way to get added to the mailing list is to email the church office at admin@uuchurchofriverside.org. Now I invite you to sit back, take a slow, deep breath as we move into the worship hour. You're welcome to read with me the mission statement of our church. Our mission is to foster a diverse religious community that celebrates life, affirms the individual, encourages spiritual growth and open thought, and works to advance social justice and environmental sustainability. Tinka friend, who also happens to be my wife of 50 years, count them 50, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. She's a longtime member of the Universalist Unitarian Church of Riverside. She loves music, singing, and dancing. She has sung in many choirs, including our previous church choir, and in choruses. She currently sings with the Riverside Resistance Revival Chorus. She has always been drawn to the soul-touching and uplifting quality of gospel music. What constitutes gospel music? Where and how does it fit into American history? And what is the legacy of Thomas A. Dorsey, who is universally considered to be the father of gospel music? Tinka is hoping to answer those questions for us today. We have two lightings of sacred flames. The first is a remembrance candle for the indigenous peoples who continue to cry out for justice and self-determination. We remember that underneath us is the unceded land of several indigenous peoples, the Cahuilla, the Luiseño, and the Capeño. We light this sacred flame in their remembrance and in recognition of their ongoing struggle for freedom and dignity.
Light it slowly.
Hallelujah. Can I get an amen? Thank you for that, Eric. Our second sacred flame is our own chalice, the symbol of our faith. We are blessed with this space and opportunity to strive to live out our common principles, to bring justice, equality, and compassion into our daily lives, to resist all that threatens the earth and her people, and to be part of a world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Let these thoughts carry us forth as we journey and worship together. Today's chalice lighting words are: love is the doctrine of this church, a universalist covenant. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve human need, to that end, all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other and with God. Our next hymn is Spirit of Life. It is number 123, Spirit of Life, from the Gray Hymnal. Feel free to sing as the Spirit moves you. Please stand in body or spirit and join us in singing number 123, Spirit of Life.
Of compassion.
This portion of our service is to support our beloved historical church. This can be accomplished several ways. In addition to the weekly collection, you may send your checks to the church address, which is shown here. Hopefully. You may contribute by PayPal or using the QR code, which is shown here, as well as the church website and in the newsletter. Stater Brothers Market gives our church a rebate on Stater grocery cards, which we will have in church each Sunday. You get the full value, and the church also receives a percentage for free. Please see Dinah Rowe or Robert Braun in the church office, or if you are interested in purchasing the gift cards. Please donate as the Spirit moves you by whatever method works best for you. Thank you for your generosity. To those who give of their time and their talent, thank you for your generous care and attention. Will our ushers now please come forward? They will receive the collection. A tote bag will also be passed around to collect food and hygiene items for our local community. To all of you who are here today, thank you for the presence, for the gift of your presence. Our next hymn is number 402, From You I Receive, from the Gray Hymnal. Feel free to sing as the Spirit moves you, but please, only with a mask on. Please stand in body and spirit and join us in singing hymn number 402, From You I Receive.
From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live.
Our meditation today was written by Tinka Friend. In preparation for her gospel sermon, she wants each of us to remember a time in which we were in great emotional pain or in deep despair. feeling alone, feeling hopeless, was there anything that brought you comfort? Was there an image you clung to? Was there a song that helped you through? Was there a person you reached out to? Whatever got you through that dark night of the soul, hold it in your mind. And know that you are not alone. And it does not have to last. Now, I would like to introduce Tinka Friend, speaking to us on Nothing But Love in God's Water, Part 1.
Good morning. I have had a cough and congestion all week, hence wearing the mask this morning. I have a cup of water here. I've got some lozenges. So I'm hoping, I'm going to unwrap one right now. So I'm hoping I'll be able to get through the sermon without coughing spasms. But if I do, please bear with me. The Black Church has been the home of creative expression and experimentation for more than 300 years. From the beginning, this creativity was driven by the one instrument that Black people could count on when nothing else was available to them: the human voice. Thus starts the PBS 3-part series on gospel by Dr. Henry Louis Gates Jr., and I highly urge you to watch it if you get the opportunity and you haven't already. Most, but not all, but most of my sermon comes from that broadcast. From the beginning, gospel was a music responding to its time, testifying to God's goodness and grace in the language of the King James Bible, often grounded in Negro slave spirituals, uplifted by rhythms and riffs from the blues and jazz. Various people within the Black religious, musical, and historical communities were interviewed for this series, and they each gave different definitions and explanations from their perspective. So here are a few. So from Jordan, the gospel sound is a free vocal sound that comes from the heart. It comes from the many, many rivers that a people have had to cross to get to freedom. From Claudina Harold, it is the musical variant of the Black sacred tradition. It is the good news. From Robert Darden, it's the music of Saturday night with the message of Sunday morning. From Dr. Henry Louis Gates, Jr., gospel has long been the heart and soul of the Black church, spreading the good news and broadcasting the message everywhere. And from Teresa Hairston, gospel music has transcended where it came from and now belongs to the world. While gospel has deep, deep roots in Negro spirituals, the story of gospel music actually begins with the Great Migration. As Black migrants made their way from the deep South to the cities up north and out west after 1910. As they migrated, they carried the songs and the preaching styles of their home churches of the South right along with them. Chicago is almost universally agreed to be the birthplace of gospel music. While many Southern transplants contributed to the rise of gospel, no one person played a more pivotal role than a young musician named Thomas Andrew Dorsey, who would later be referred to as the father of gospel music. Today's sermon focuses on his story in the history of gospel music. Thomas Dorsey was born in Villa Rica, Georgia. His father was a Baptist minister and his mother played the organ for the church services. So he was raised up in the music of the church. But he headed north to Chicago after he made a name for himself as a blues musician, where he often found work playing in the red light districts. In Chicago, he wrote, recorded, played, and sang with others on more than 200 blues songs during the 1920s. During the 20s, there was a rise of recorded Black sound with the likes of Louis Armstrong, Bessie Smith, you heard her at the very beginning, Ma Rainey, and Ethel Waters. Dorsey was self-trained on piano, and to earn an income, he played at house parties. He learned from Ma Rainey and Bessie Smith, the two women, how to navigate the record industry to make sure that he would receive what he deserved financially. He came to realize that there were two revenue streams for music: copywriting and publishing. And so he copyrighted everything he wrote. Dorsey was doing all right as a singer, songwriter, blues musician, but with that lifestyle, he had drifted away from the church. However, in 1921, he reluctantly went with his uncle, who was visiting from the South, to the National Baptist Convention being held in the South Side of Chicago. Being in the 1920s, you can imagine, religious conventions were not integrated. So this is not probably the National Baptist Convention that we normally would think of when we hear that. There were several African American Christian conventions and conferences, and this was one of them. Founded in 1895, the National Baptist Convention is still one of the largest Black religious organizations in the world. It was there that he met and heard religious songwriters, was greatly inspired, and rediscovered the church and its power and the power of its sacred traditions. And for the next 50 years, he served as the music director at Chicago's Pilgrim Baptist Church. Now, Dorsey came away from that convention saying, "I want to write that kind of music." And he quickly wrote a song titled, "If I Don't Get There." But the pastors that he tried to sell the song to were outraged. He got responses like, "This sounds like the music of the clubs. This sounds like the music of Vice. What does he think, bringing those jazzy articulations, this rhythm into my church?" Well, that song of his, "If I Don't Get There," disrupted people's idea of what sacred music is. Now, before gospel, the music of the Black churches, especially in the North, were classical oratorios or European-styled Negro spirituals. That had to do with what is called respectability politics, trying to show that Black churches were just as respectable as white churches. There was also on the part of the Black churches an intentional shedding of things that felt homespun or country or Southern in order to embrace this Northern urban life, so to secure safety and acceptance in a broader American life. So you have to remember that back then, at the time that in the 1920s, there were people still alive who had been slaves. And at that time, people were just, and also that was after the disaster of Reconstruction and now during Jim Crow. So people were trying to figure out what it meant to be Black, to be free, and to be safe. And sadly, I feel that is not so much different as today. According to Dorsey in a recorded interview, you couldn't go to a church and tell them that you were going to sing a gospel song. Preacher wouldn't let you do it. Most of them says you can only preach the gospel. You can't sing no gospel. If you want to sing a song, go ahead and sing it. But you ain't preaching no gospel song. They told you, just like that. I've been thrown out of some of the best churches in America. Dorsey's first attempt to popularize a new style of sacred song failed miserably, but his time would come. He continued to experiment with its signature sound. In 1930, so about a decade later, he would get a second chance at the National Baptist Convention in Chicago. His song, "If You See My Savior," electrified the convention. People loved this song, which wasn't quite as jazzy as the earlier one, and they wanted to know who's the man who wrote it and where can they get it. Suddenly, the National Baptist Convention said, "Young man, come up and sell your songs at our convention." In 1932, he co-founded the Gospel Choral Union of Chicago, later renamed the National Convention of Gospel Choirs and Choruses, an organization dedicated to training musicians and singers from all over the United States, and it is still active today. That was a very good move, creating that, because it cultivated the next generations of gospel musicians and singers, keeping both the genre alive, as well as providing an ever-growing population for his songs. Mahalia Jackson and Sally Martin were trained by Dorsey in this manner and would sing his songs to prospective buyers, the buyers of his sheet music, because this really wasn't being recorded. It was primarily being disseminated to churches by sheet music, while being accompanied on the piano by Dorsey, who really was not that great of a singer. At that same year, on August 26th, just as Dorsey was basking in all his glory and fame, personal tragedy struck, and his faith was put to the test. His wife, Nettie Harper Dorsey, died in childbirth. And then the next day, his infant son, Thomas A. Dorsey Jr., died as well. Dorsey was devastated and broken. He was consumed with grief. He spiraled into a deep depression. He couldn't eat. He couldn't sleep. He almost was not able to stand at his wife and son's funeral. He was inconsolable. He felt that God had turned away and abandoned him. Within this dark space of hopelessness, Dorsey prayed, imploring a loving God to rescue him from the depths of his despair. Now, he had written so many gospel songs, but you know what? Mainly it was a way for revenue. They came mostly from his head. This time, he turned to God and poured out his broken heart, asking for healing, for comfort. And in his mind, something said, reach out and extend your hand. And the result was one of his most famous and endearing compositions, Take My Hand, Precious Lord. With that song, Dorsey was able to start healing. And it gave birth to a new, more personal form of gospel, redirecting the arc of the music's future. This preeminent gospel standard is less about a particular Christian theological discourse, and instead a personal, cathartic expression of adversity and of struggle, and that is universal. To counter his bereavement, he immersed himself in marketing his songs. He visited scores of churches in and around Chicago with his sheet music. An unintended consequence was that it helped spread gospel blues. During this time of spreading the gospel music, his sheet music sold so well that it supplanted the first book of compiled songs for Black churches, and more churches also started their own gospel choirs. In 1933, Dorsey directed a 600-person gospel chorus at the Baptist National Baptist Convention. As more and more gospel choirs were formed, Black gospel choirs were asked to perform at several white churches in Chicago. And Dorsey's own Pilgrim Baptist Church choir that he had formed performed at the 1933 World's Fair. Take My Hand, Precious Lord, continued to touch the soul and the spirit and to provide comfort to so many people, regardless of color. In 1939, Dorsey wrote his second most beloved gospel, There Will Be Peace in the Valley. He conceived of it while traveling on a train through southern Indiana during the pre-World War tensions. Looking out the window of the train, and he observed various animals, horses, cows, sheep, in the fields, all grazing contentedly beside each other, together in this small valley. And Dorsey then questioned why mankind couldn't seem to live in peace. Both of these songs have found a large following throughout the years. Take My Hand, Precious Lord was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s favorite song, and he would often ask Mahalia Jackson to sing it for him when he needed to be uplifted. He had it sung at his civil rights rallies in order to inspire the crowds. Mahalia sang it at Martin's funeral. President Lyndon B. Johnson asked for it to be sung at his funeral, and it was. And Aretha Franklin sang it at Mahalia Jackson's funeral. There Will Be Peace in the Valley was originally written for Mahalia Jackson, and it crossed over racial lines when Red Foley and the Sunshine Boys recorded it in 1951. It was the first gospel recording to sell 1 million copies. Elvis Presley sung it on his third and final appearance of The Ed Sullivan Show. Presley chose the selection because he felt keenly about the recent crisis at that time involving refugees fleeing Hungary after an invasion by the Soviet Union. And that immediate aid was needed to support them. Based on the positive response from his performance, Presley recorded the song at RCA the following week and put it on his first Christmas album later that same year. So now it has entered into American history, not just relegated over to Black history. Although I will say Black history is American history. I mentioned earlier about Mahalia Jackson and Sally Martin being taught by Thomas Dorsey. Sally Martin did more for Dorsey than simply be his protege. Sally Martin, a highly respected gospel singer and a visionary entrepreneur, remember this is Women's History Month here, proved to be instrumental to Dorsey's financial success. Many historians call her the mother of gospel music. She saw Dorsey doing well with his songs artistically, but not financially. His songs became popular largely because of the salesmanship of Sally Martin. She was a savvy, genius businesswoman. She didn't just organize his finances, but she also organized a way that gospel music could succeed. She was basically his manager, his salesperson, his publicist. She accompanied him, carrying the music, singing the songs, and then selling the music after the service or performance. Remember, Dorsey copyrighted and published his music, but he didn't know how to maximize it. And Sally Martin took Dorsey's music publishing firm, called Dorsey's House of Music, which was the first Black-owned gospel publishing house in the United States, and turned it into something that was a major force. Within a decade, he had written about 300 gospel songs. In his lifetime, he wrote over 3,000 songs, with about a third of them being gospel. Recordings of these sold millions of copies in both gospel and secular markets. Because of Sally Martin, Thomas Dorsey was able to live comfortably well into his old age. So now, in honor of both the father and mother of gospel, Would you please stand as you were able and join in the singing of Precious Lord, Take My Hand.
Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, let me stand. I am tired, I am weak, I am worn. Through the storm, through the night, lead me on to the light. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home. When my way grows drear, precious Lord, linger near. When my life is almost gone, hear my cry, hear my call. Hold my hand, lest I fall. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home. When the darkness appears and the night draws near, and the day is past and gone, at the river I stand. Guide my feet, hold my hand, take my hand, precious Lord, lead me
Now I'm going to do the benediction. As I illustrated during the meditation before the sermon, no one is immune to doubts. No one is immune to times in which they are in great emotional pain or in deep despair. When we feel alone or abandoned. When hopelessness seems like it is swallowing us up. When we are not sure that we can continue to go on. We all seek out something that can bring us comfort. It might be a picture, an image. It might be a song or music. It might be a person, a touch, a hug. It might be a reading. It might be a prayer. We all need something to grasp and hang on to lead us out of that dark night of the soul, to know that we are not alone and that it will not last forever. We all need something that acknowledges our pain and suffering, but also gives us hope. So for most people in the Black community, and for many others as well, that is what gospel music does. Amen. Namaste and blessed be.
Thank you, Tinka, for sharing your valuable time and insights with us this morning. It is sincerely appreciated, and we look forward to seeing you again. We also thank Tinka Friend, who accompanies our hymns in American Sign Language. We will have 10 to 15 minutes for discussion. Those who wish to share your thoughts and observations on today's topic. Please be aware this will be included on the video that is posted. For the rest of you, you're now welcome to adjourn into the parish hall. Would anyone like to come up and share their thoughts on today's?
So I personally would like to hear, if anyone is willing, your exposure, your take, your comfort level with gospel music. Or you can share, if you so inclined, also about what came up for you during that meditation, or what do you reach out to that gets you through tough times?
Thank you so much, Tinka, for giving that service for us. That was a lot of new information for me. I really enjoyed learning that. One of the things that I was thinking of is the first song. One of the first songs that we sang was "Amazing Grace," which is a traditional Scottish hymn. And there are a number of other Scottish songs that have made their way into the lexicon of Black Americans in particular. Even things like "Black is the color of my true love's hair," and a variety of others. And I don't have any point that I'm trying to make here, but I think it's interesting that there's something about that style of music really works well with their style as well. And there's a really nice blending when it's worked so well for some reason that I can't necessarily explain. But I think it's interesting that there's a rich history of taking that Celtic sound and making it a Black American sound.
And I don't have any particular answer in terms of research or anything, but I will say it doesn't really surprise me. I come from Scotch-Irish and ancestry that moved to the south. You know, they migrated to the south and in the country, and so there's a lot. They brought a lot of their music, and the Irish in particular have really gone through terrible, discriminations and times and everything. And so it doesn't surprise me that there is a commonality that they share, and then also with bringing that music to the country roads and the hollers and the different places of the South where there would be interaction or mingling. Doesn't surprise me.
I don't know why Alec got it first. He's a UU, okay? There are some people here that didn't have the privilege of discovering what UU was, so they're like in their 30s. So. Thank you, Alec. I love you. So I grew up conservative Christian. My mom locked the door when the guy who wasn't white got too close to the window. Not when the white guys got close. So I had a very different view of Black churches, Black gospel music. I didn't grow up with it. The first time I really got introduced to the Black gospel community was martial arts. I've been training martial arts since I was 14. I'm 34 now, so like 20 years. Mm-hmm. He was half Jewish and half Black. I think that's pretty much as low as you can get on the totem pole of who gets beat up the most in East LA, and he grew up in East LA, so he didn't mess with him. He messed with me all the time, I messed with him back. It was the best thing in the world. I don't know if he was more Jewish, because I'm Jewish, or I don't know, we're both poor, because I'm Polish. our heritage is not something to be ashamed of, but it is something hard to get away from, as a defining factor. And I think that's something I experience in gospel music, overcoming incredible situations. So thank you for sharing that incredible story. My mind is blown.
Thank you. Jonathan, I will share with you that, yes. I will share with you that on my father's side, I said that the Scotch-Irish comes from my mother's side. On my father's side, my my great-grandfather came over as a Polish Jew when he was 17. So.
If you want to get lower than a we were all Poles and Jews when we immigrated. We couldn't afford to live on the base level, so we all lived on the ground level, basically.
Yeah.
And so my grandpa would always say Polish jokes,
Did anyone else want to come up?
Raised Episcopalian, became pagan. It's an interesting thing when you hear the gospel stuff, because the way I always used to pick it, there used to be some comedy routines of two dressed to the nines guardsmen in tiny little shacks in the out in the middle of nowhere, like someplace that just a bombed out, blasted, bleak-looking little area, but by God, they were defending the border. And they'd be there with two ostentatious, flashy, but not the same uniforms. And they would defend their little borders like that. Well, I was always maybe the other side of the thing. Rather than defending my fierce little border, I was always the guy that says, if I can just kick a couple of these old railroad ties into the gully, you can walk across, you can make a bridge, you can cross over. You can cook a little, you can sing a little. And for me, that was the way gospel seemed to work, is that it would be so emotional and so open and so raw sometimes. And then there would be these things as a pagan that I'd run into and just go, I want to love you. I want to shake hands, and I can't. And so when we talk about gospel, there's the little speck of self where you say, I'm on a new spiritual quest and this is my way. This is my new way. Or there's that little point where you're trying to build a bridge and be what I didn't know at the time, universalist, be holding on to an entire universe, the commons and the sames, and the I love you man. Can't stand that part of you, but I love that part of you. And so when I hear gospel, it's always, to me, it's that little bridge where you learn to cook together, laugh together, swear at the man together, and that we're far from each other sometimes, achingly far. But other times we're so close the skin touches.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill. My goal this morning with this sermon, and this is part one, next week is part two, where I bring the aspect of where I merge the 1960s and the civil rights, burgeoning of Black civil rights with gospel. But really the reason why I wanted to do this series on gospel, number one, as you heard, I love gospel music. It speaks to me, it soothes me, I can connect with it. I did not grow up in a Black church, but I did grow up with hearing gospel music, and I grew up in a Christian church. So Christian language does not really bother me. although I, have rejected the doctrine and that kind of a thing, still at times I find myself when I am in that dark, place of my soul, that dark night of the soul, the songs, the prayers, the language actually does comfort me. I know, however, after 30 years in a UU church, that there are many people who grew up Christian and have obviously rejected that dogma that do not respond to hymns, Christian style hymns or language or the music of it, and often it's difficult for them to open up and let that in and see what possible benefit they personally could have. I remember an experience that we had here where we, 20 years ago, we had a sister church. It was a black church that was over on 14th Street on Martin Luther King Boulevard. It was called the Good News Missionary Baptist Church. And our choir often we would exchange choirs or we would sing together. And we went over and sang at some of theirs. And when they came over here, I remember one time in particular where people, unfortunately, of our church got up and walked out during some of the hymns, some of the gospel songs and that were being sung when the choir was up here, because they obviously were not comfortable with the word God or salvation or kind of any of that. So I've often thought that if we'd had a sermon such as this to really look at what gospel music is, where it came from, what might we be able to get out of it, and what might we have in common, that reaction maybe wouldn't have happened. So I'm really glad that I got the opportunity to present that to everybody, and I do hope you'll show up next week to find out how the gospel music supported and influenced the civil rights movement of the 1960s. Is there anyone online that has a comment? No? Anybody else in the room that wants to add something? You'll have to pull that.
Okay, I just want to say that.
You get a little closer.
Closer, okay. I grew up in a home where we hardly ever heard music until I was, I don't know, older. And I remember finally getting like a record player. I'm ancient, so we're talking about record players and a little transistor radio. My sister and I went, like when we were in high school, and it was like, oh, this is great. Needless to say, I'm musically challenged. I can't sing for anything, but music spoke to me. And I will say that, I was very drawn to classical music, but I was also, when I discovered the blues, it spoke to me in some deep way, because all those repressed feelings inside me, they were speaking it. And it was, it still is that way for me, that I hear this music. I wasn't exposed to a lot of gospel, but I did hear blues, and it just spoke to me in a way that's so deep, because it's, the language of grief and sorrow, that's universal. And I love the song. So when I hear that, it just, yeah, it does something for me. So I'm very grateful that you did this, and I will definitely be back.
Thank you.
During the civil rights era, I was also studying Negro spirituals, as we called them then, and they had a part in bringing the gospel together, and part of it was there were more and more Black people going to colleges, higher education, and they were learning, the 12-tone music that,
Mm-hmm.
From Europe. And,
More Western.
And changing it is some of the rhythms but still keeping the
Mm-hmm.
basic rhythms like that. And I had the opportunity in the 70s in Santa Barbara to go to a lecture by a man who was in his 80s at the time, and he was the grandson of slaves.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, I may be one of the last that has heard stories about these spirituals from someone who actually sang them in the fields.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very interesting talk. And because very often when there were still slaves, when they were still enslaved, there were only two people that were educated, and that was the minister and the minister's wife, and the minister's wife was educated in music.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you had the call and response.
Mm-hmm.
It's typical of their early singing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Tim, before you speak, just a second, because I don't want to forget it. There was something that Maggie said about, I don't remember how you phrased it, but like you can't carry a tune or you can't, or something along those lines. I just want to say that with gospel music, and I would say church music in a lot of different churches or whatever, especially poorer churches, music in the church has nothing to do with the performance quality, the evaluation, how good you can sing, how good of a performance you're doing. It has to do with connecting to the Spirit. And so anybody can sing and can sing forthrightly and can sing energetically and can sing loudly, because it's not about how you sound, it's about what's coming from your heart through that music. So I just want to say that. Thank you, Tim.
I'd just like to say I have the floor. I have been in debates. I've had the floor. There's pro and con. And since the topic is Southern Black music, this is one of the Southern Black songs. Bringing in the sheep, we'll come and bringing in the sheep. Now, there's a time when I had thought that I was going to be a speaker. I had it all outlined, and I said, and Mary Margaret, I don't know, I forget her name, but she said, you think you're going to be the main speaker, don't you? I said, yeah, and she said, well, you're not. And so I said, since I think I can I don't want to be a guest speaker sometime. I know I've studied, I know formal speaking is valid. So, since this is freelance, I just want to say this. Darling, when I think about you, I think about love. I want to make love. I want to make love. I want to make love to you.
Thank you, Tim. Ralph, were you going to come up and say something? And I'm sorry, they can't hear you and I can't hear you, so if... So you wanted to ask me a question, I got that part.
Yeah, well, I'll preface it. My dad's brother, my dad was raised in Washington, D.C., and his brother was a Baptist minister in Maryland, and I recently talked to his son, and his son said that during the civil rights movement, his church was occupied by Black people, and many of the members walked out of his church. And I remember when I was in Maryland, finding out that racism was in that part of the family. It wasn't in my uncle. And my uncle himself or my dad. But it's still a problem, and I'm just wondering if I got it right that people from this church rejected the relationship with the Good News Church. And what happened, I'm wondering if it's a possibility to have a relationship with similar to that now with another church.
Okay, so you're asking me after that situation what happened? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
I would be interested in knowing, and I figure other people would be too.
Yeah. So it was the minister, our minister at the time, Reverend Cynthia Kane. She was the president of the Riverside Interfaith Fellowship, which so ministers and leaders, from different came together. And so that's where she met Johnny, who was the minister at that church. And so they decided to see if maybe we could, connect together, and especially working on civil rights things and stuff. And so our church agreed. We did things. Like I said, we went over and sang with their choir. Johnny sometimes came over here. We went there. And after that, I can tell you that I was an evangelical person for Unitarian Universalism with the Good News Missionary Baptist Church and all of this. And I was mortified and embarrassed and heartbroken when they came here and people got up and walked out. And then afterwards, a lot of people complained about the religiosity, that had to do with it. So anyway, we continued as choirs to do that. Ministers continued. We continued to have different things. We never again participated in services that way. And then Reverend Cynthia Kane got, she found, she was back east, I don't remember now where, but anyway, she became a minister there. And then I tried to keep some connection, and then Johnny died of a heart attack, Reverend Johnny. And then when that happened, they looked for a minister to come. Nick and I went over to their service a couple of times, and unfortunately, they were not able to. They were like in a storefront. They were a storefront church. And they were not able to continue, so that church dissolved.
I see. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, anyone else?
I guess it's just a build up on what I was saying before about keeping a bridge open. If you don't have gospel, if you don't, just let there be some kind of a bridge between your head and your heart. Some kind of bridge. Gospel works. I can remember being whipsawed for 5-6 hours, and then I suddenly realized that between the blues I was listening to and the gospel on radio, I was getting the best musicians you could ask for at the top of their craft, at the top of their game, singing, and of course it wrecked me. But somewhere in this universe, somewhere, you lead with your head or your heart. For God's sake, let there be a bridge open so you can do both. You're stronger and happier that way. Well, maybe happier.
Thank you. Okay, if there's no other comments, you are free to go. And blessings upon all of us as we exit here. And please join us for fellowship in the parish hall. Thank you.